Imagine you are standing at the edge of the ocean. The water stretches out in front of you, dark and endless, and somewhere beneath the surface, something is waiting, something ancient, something that does not care about you at all. Now imagine chasing that thing, not because you have to, not because it threatens your family or your home, but because it took something from you, something physical, something psychological, and now you cannot rest until you have destroyed it, or it has destroyed you. That is the world of Moby-Dick. Published in 1851 by Herman Melville, this novel is often called the Great American Novel. But it is so much more than a book about a whale. It is a story about obsession, free will, the arrogance of man, and the terrifying silence of the universe when you ask it why. Today, we are going on a voyage. We are going to follow one ship, one captain, and one white whale, all the way to the bitter end. Our story begins with one of the most famous opening lines in all of American literature. A young man introduces himself simply as Ishmael, though he hints that this may not even be his real name. He tells us, with a kind of wry self-awareness, that when he grows restless on land, when life becomes gray and heavy, when he finds himself stopping in front of coffin warehouses and walking behind every funeral he sees, that is when he knows it is time to go to sea. Ishmael is not rich. He has no grand plan. He is a man adrift, literally and spiritually, and the ocean is his remedy. He makes his way to New Bedford, Massachusetts, a famous whaling town, where he intends to sign on to a whaling ship and disappear into the open water for a few years. On his first night, the inn is packed. He has to share a bed with a stranger, which was apparently normal in 1850, though still slightly alarming. His bedmate turns out to be a Polynesian harpooner named Pequod. At first, Ishmael is terrified. Pequod is covered in tattoos from head to toe and carries around a shrunken head as a kind of personal artifact. But once the initial shock fades, Ishmael sees the man behind the tattoos, and what he finds is a deeply honorable, brave, and warm human being. The two become fast friends, almost brothers, bound together before they have even stepped on a ship. Together, they travel to Nantucket and sign aboard a whaling vessel called the Pequod. It is a dark, weathered ship, decorated with the bones and teeth of whales it has already killed, a detail that feels, in retrospect, like a warning no one bothered to read. For the first several days at sea, the captain of the Pequod does not appear. He stays locked in his cabin. The crew only hears rumors. But eventually, he emerges. Captain Ahab stands on the quarterdeck like a man carved out of iron and fury. He has a false leg made from the jaw of a sperm whale and a deep lightning-shaped scar running down the side of his face and neck. No one is entirely sure how it got there, and no one quite dares to ask. He is old and weathered and magnetic in the way that truly dangerous people sometimes are. Ahab is not interested in ordinary whaling. He has one purpose on this voyage, and he makes it known to the crew with the theatrical brilliance of a man who has rehearsed this moment in his head for years. He nails a gold doubloon on the mast and announces that it belongs to whoever first spots Moby-Dick, the enormous, legendary, almost mythological creature that, on a previous voyage, had destroyed Ahab's boat and bitten off his leg. The crew is electrified. They cheer. They are swept up in his energy, his certainty, his wild charisma. Almost all of them. One officer, the first mate, Starbuck, steps forward and objects. Starbuck is everything Ahab is not. He is rational, principled, deeply religious, and genuinely frightened, not of the whale, but of what this mission means. He tells Ahab plainly that seeking revenge on a dumb animal is madness, that they are hired to collect whale oil, not to pursue personal vendettas across the entire ocean. He says it is blasphemous to treat a beast as if it were a thinking, malicious enemy. Ahab listens, and then he overrides him. And from that moment on, the Pequod is not sailing toward profit, it is sailing toward obsession. Melville spends a great deal of the novel inside the world of whaling itself, and this is where the book becomes something stranger and richer than a simple adventure story. There are entire chapters devoted to the anatomy of whales, the mechanics of harpooning, the process of boiling whale fat into oil on the deck of the ship, the different types of whale species, the psychology of men who do this work for a living. Some readers find this overwhelming. Others find it hypnotic. Because what Melville is doing is building a world so completely and so thoroughly that when the catastrophe finally arrives, you feel the full weight of everything that is about to be destroyed. Among the crew, we meet remarkable people. Pequod, of course, Ishmael's companion, a man of extraordinary courage who once wins a life-or-death bet by diving off a moving ship and swimming after a man who had just fallen overboard. There is Tashtego, a Native American harpooner from Gay Head, and Dagu, an enormous African harpooner, and together these three represent something quietly radical for a novel of 1851. Melville treats them as the most competent, bravest men on the ship, without condescension or exoticism. They are the ones with the hands on the harpoons. The fate of every voyage rests on them. There is also Pip, a young black cabin boy, gentle and musical, who falls out of a whaleboat during a hunt and is briefly left alone in the open ocean. He is eventually rescued, but the experience shatters him. He emerges half-mad, speaking in riddles and biblical verse. And yet Ahab, of all people, develops a strange and tender affection for Pip, as if he recognizes in the boy's broken mind something that mirrors his own. As the Pequod crosses the Atlantic, rounds the Cape of Good Hope, and moves into the Pacific, it encounters other ships. Melville uses these meetings brilliantly as a kind of chorus. Each ship is a mirror, reflecting a different version of what the Pequod might become or might have been. One ship, the Samuel Enderby, is captained by a man who also lost a limb to Moby-Dick, his arm. But this captain's response was simply to sail away and be grateful he survived. He thinks Ahab is insane. He laughs, he drinks. He has made peace with the fact that some things in the ocean are bigger than you and indifferent to your suffering. Ahab cannot understand this. He cannot comprehend the option of turning away. For him, Moby-Dick is not just a whale. The whale has become the symbol of everything in the universe that is cruel and arbitrary and beyond human control. Every tragedy that ever happened without reason, every suffering that went unanswered, every prayer that fell into silence. Ahab intends to put a harpoon in it. Not because he will win, but because the act of trying feels, to him, like the only dignified response to a hostile universe. Another ship, the Rachel, is searching for its captain's missing son, a boy lost at sea during an encounter with Moby-Dick. The captain begs Ahab to help him search. Ahab refuses and sails on. It is one of the coldest moments in the novel, and one of the most revealing. Ahab has sacrificed his own humanity on the altar of his obsession. A missing child cannot compete with his white whale. As the Pequod finally enters the waters where Moby-Dick is known to swim, the tension becomes almost unbearable. Ahab stations himself at the top of the mast, day and night, watching the horizon. And then, on a crystalline morning, he spots the whale himself. The final chase lasts 3 days, and Melville builds it like a symphony reaching its final movement. On the first day, the whaleboats are lowered. Ahab's boat reaches the whale. The harpoon strikes, and Moby-Dick, with a kind of terrible intelligence, rises from beneath and destroys the boats, scattering the men into the sea. The Pequod rescues them. Starbuck urges Ahab to stop. Ahab refuses. On the second day, the boats go out again. Again they reach the whale. Again there is violence on the water, more destruction, more men nearly killed. Starbuck stands before Ahab on the deck and tells him with raw emotion that this is madness, that they have wives, children, that Ahab himself has a young wife and a new baby son he has barely met, that there is still time to turn the ship around. Ahab falters. For just a moment, you can see the man beneath the monomaniac. And then the moment passes. On the third day, the whale is spotted again. Everything accelerates. The boats go out, harpoons fly, lines tangle. And then Moby-Dick turns and attacks the Pequod directly. The whale drives himself into the hull of the ship with devastating force. The Pequod begins to sink. In the chaos, the harpoon line wraps around Ahab's neck and pulls him into the sea. He is gone in an instant. The ship spirals downward, dragging the crew with it. Every sailor, every harpooner, Starbuck, Queequeg, Pip, Tashtego, all of them pulled into the vortex. All of them except one. Ishmael survives because earlier on the voyage, Queequeg had fallen gravely ill and ordered himself a coffin, expecting to die. He recovered, but the coffin remained on the ship. When the Pequod woes down, the coffin shoots to the surface and becomes a life buoy, and Ishmael clings to it, floating alone on the open ocean, until he is eventually rescued by the Rachel, the very ship that had been searching for its lost son. The novel ends with that extraordinary image, the lone survivor floating on a coffin, rescued by a ship whose mission was grief.
You might be wondering, what does a 19th century novel about a whale hunt have to do with the world we live in now? Everything, genuinely everything. Because Ahab is not a historical artifact, he is a type of person we know. He is the CEO who drives a company into the ground, chasing a singular, personal vision. He is the political leader who sacrifices everything, peace, lives, reason, on the altar of a grievance that became ideology. He is every human being who has ever mistaken their wound for their identity and built their entire purpose around the thing that hurt them. Ahab's tragedy is that he is genuinely brilliant. He is charismatic and perceptive and capable of astonishing insight. In a different story, with a different wound, he might have been great. But obsession is not passion. Obsession is passion that has turned inward and begun eating itself. Ahab cannot stop, not because he lacks intelligence, but because stopping would require him to grieve, and grief is the one thing he has never allowed himself. The white whale itself is one of literature's most powerful symbols precisely because it resists a single interpretation. Moby-Dick is nature, indifferent to human suffering. It is God, inscrutable and silent. It is fate, which cannot be bargained with. It is whatever you put into it, and everyone puts something different in. There is also something deeply modern about Melville's treatment of diversity. The crew of the Pequod is one of the most racially varied in all of American fiction of its era. Men from Polynesia, Africa, Native America, and everywhere in between work side by side, and the most skilled and courageous among them are not the white officers. Melville was writing at the edge of the Civil War, and the ship can be read as an allegory for America itself. All these different people, bound together, sailing under a mad captain toward a catastrophe no one can stop. And Ishmael, the survivor, the witness, the narrator, is us. He is the person who watches all this unfold, who sees clearly what is happening but cannot stop it, and who is left at the end to make meaning out of the wreckage. In an age of social media, where outrage is monetized and obsession is often rewarded, in a world where we watch powerful people sail toward disaster in real time and feel helpless to intervene, Moby-Dick reads less like history and more like prophecy. At its heart, Moby-Dick is asking a question that has no comfortable answer. When the universe strikes you, when it takes something from you without reason and without remorse, how do you respond? Ahab's answer is to fight back, to pursue the thing that hurt him to the ends of the earth and ram a harpoon into its side. It is a magnificent, terrible, deeply human answer. It destroys him, it destroys everyone around him, but it is also, in its own broken way, a refusal to simply accept the randomness of suffering, a refusal to live in a world that will not explain itself. Ishmael's answer is different. He witnesses, he survives, he tells the story. He floats on a coffin in the middle of the ocean and keeps breathing. There is quiet wisdom in that. the wisdom of the person who accepts that the whale is bigger than you and that surviving it is not a defeat. Herman Melville wrote this book in a frenzy, largely alone, in a farmhouse in Massachusetts, and it was a commercial failure when it was published. It was not truly appreciated until decades after his death. He never knew the impact it would have. There is something of Ahab in that too, the artist who pours everything into a vision the world cannot yet see. Call him Ishmael, call him mad, call him a warning, but whatever you call him, Ahab is unforgettable, and the white whale is still out there, somewhere in the deep.